The best piece of advice I could give to property developers in getting their grid connection sorted out is do it early. We are in the throes of the energy transition right now, and what that means is electric vehicles are being rolled out at scale, and along with electric vehicles is the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And it's been really noticeable over the last 6 months even. The amount of charging infrastructure that's gone live is huge. We build a huge amount of it ourselves. And these are installations that take huge load. So an electric vehicle forecourt, for example, is about 6 MVA. That's enough power for 5,000 houses. So these are getting rolled out around the country, and it's gobbling up all the capacity there is out there. So all of a sudden, getting a grid connection, which was always difficult and hard work anyway, in some areas of the country, it's become nigh on impossible because the electric vehicles are on the grid taking the capacity. So really look into it early is the best piece of advice, and we can help with the journey on that. So as a developer, when you need an electricity connection, there has to be the capacity to supply your development in the local electricity network. So that could be the local 11,000 volt network. So you're building a nice shiny office block, and you might need 1 or 2 MVA of capacity, and 1 MVA would power about 900 homes, for example, but it would power a typical office block. The network may not have that capacity in it, so the cables could be at their capacity. They could be at there's no more room left in them in terms of thermal capacity. The local transformers might be operating at their capacity. So if you need extra capacity built into that network, that takes time, and it can also cost a lot of money. So if you haven't considered that early in your business case or your planning assumptions or your program, that can really catch a lot of developers out further down the line when all of a sudden they're told they won't get capacity for 2-3 years in some cases. So it really pays to engage early, use a specialist like us who can find where the capacity is and how much it'll cost and how long it will take, but really start looking early. The planning authorities have no idea. So what can and what does happen, it really does happen, is developer secures a piece of land, they secure the necessary backing, they get planning, they get outline plan permission, develop it, go for detailed planning permission. They then think about their utilities and their grid connection, and the local electricity company says, yeah, you can get connected, but it'll be 5 years, cost £5 million, send us a check, and then it's a disaster. So yeah, the planning authority will not tell you what's going on in the electricity network. Only people like ourselves or the electricity network can tell you, is there a capacity on that piece of land at that time? So what we can do is you can tell us where you want to develop. We can look at the electricity network. We've got the exact same access as the electricity companies themselves, and we can tell you, is there capacity? How much capacity is there? If there's not, how long it will take to get the capacity there? And at least then you know from an early stage, is this site viable? Because the grid connection costs are a big unknown at the early stages. There is a real opportunity now when you're developing a new development, an office or a distribution centre. You can really use that opportunity now to integrate different renewable technologies into the fabric of your build. So quite often we will integrate PV on the roof, and PV on the roof is one of the cheapest, no regret options you can have because it will always stack up economically. PV in the roof, not so much wind because you've got planning consent issues and all sorts of issues with wind, but certainly PV on your roof, which you can sell into the grid as well as power your own operations. Of course, you get good ESG credentials from producing your own electricity. We can also put batteries in where we can buffer your energy that you generate during the day and use it at nighttime, for example. But also electric vehicles. So a lot of distribution centres now, and there's a big famous American retailer, they're switching over wholesale to electric vans. So you really need to think about the integration of your grid connection with your electric vehicles, which are a huge demand, and your on-site renewables, and you can make that into a real holistic solution that powers your vehicles, powers your site, but also gets a lot of credits in terms of ESG and producing your own energy. So eSmart Networks is what's known as an independent connections provider. So we design and build the actual connections to the grid. So years ago, the local electricity company, you put an application in 90 days they come back and said if you could connect or you couldn't connect, and then you pay them some money and they would have built the electricity connection. We displace the distribution network operator in that entire equation. So you can come to us. We will do sort of some advisory services where, like we discussed earlier, we will look at a piece of land. Is there capacity? Is there not? How much will it cost? Once you agree you want to go forward, we can design the connection, value engineer to drive as much cost out of it as possible, which is very successful. We then design it and we deliver it. But because everything's within our control, so it's our own jointers, our own fitters, our own excavation crews, typically we can half the time of an electricity connection than traditionally you would have used with your electricity company. So we do the upfront advisory services on is there capacity. We then design and build the connection cheaper and faster than you might think.